there, fellow Patriots. Welcome back to Patriots of the American Republic. A lot has happened since the DOJ officially announced that there is no official Epstein's client list, right? Now, this has caused many of us on the right to be outraged for several reasons, but one most importantly, we were promised transparency regarding this and a few other issues. But we were looking for some type of justice for the victims of these perverts, right? Now, I'm not sure if justice will ever happen for these poor girls, nor will we be able to prevent future victims as these perverts remain free to continue practicing their sick perversion, to be quite frank. Now, in this video, we will capture what has taken, place over the last, several days, right? From the initial confirmation, what's transpired up until most recently, right? Now, during the Turning Point USA SAS event that I attended like 2 weekends ago, Laura Ingraham managed to take a quick live poll in order to get the temperature of where things were at regarding this particular situation. Let's take a look.
So, problem solved? Right, MAGA world? Well, let's test it scientifically.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap. How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
So why is this important or relevant? Because many people are trying to dismiss this issue and, box everybody into, the folks on Twitter or X and TikTok, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal if you go outside of these two, social media platforms. They're literally saying that MAGA doesn't really care, or this isn't high in the important list for them, right? Well, as you can see, based on that video, live, people with a seemingly good moral compass do care. And it's not something that should really be dismissed because of the severity or the nature of what's being, alleged in this case, right? Now, for many years, the left has called us on the right a cult, right? They think that we love Trump no matter what. And it kind of goes back to that, gosh, on the original campaign trail where Trump was like, I could shoot somebody in the middle of the street and I won't lose any voters, right? So that kind of, I think, fueled that cult-like accusation that the left loves to, do to us. Now, we've always denied that, and, we rebuttal with the fact that we're free thinkers, right? We aren't manipulated by the media into thinking something, right? We see things for what they are, and we make our own conclusions as well as calling things for what they are. Sadly, many of us have become tribal and almost cult-like, and we've kind of breathed oxygen into this accusation from the left. For those of us who are not letting this Epstein situation go, we are being branded as traitors and not really MAGA, etc., by those who kind of are just blindly trusting in Trump and blindly trusting in the system or blindly trusting in the government. And so that's worrisome for a multitude of reasons, but I think Tucker Carlson during that SAS event does a good job of expressing how we need balance when it comes to not just this situation, but in general.
Everyone's been talking about Epstein tonight, and I want to kind of differ from the crowd a little bit in saying that I watched Ben Shapiro yesterday, and no, before you boo me, I thought he made a really solid point. He's like, it happened a long time ago. Who cares? And by the way, we should trust the government and whatever the bureaucrats tell us. And by the way, it's wrong to ask a lot of unauthorized questions. So I just want to go on the record to say I think that's absurd. And it's exactly the kind of thinking that I personally voted against in the last election. In the last election, I spent a lot of the month of October campaigning with and for the president. I voted for the president. I never vote for anybody generally. I know they're always telling you must vote or you can't have an opinion. Oh, shut up. I don't like to vote, but I did vote this time. And I don't like to vote because I don't believe in any of them. And this time I really felt like I know Trump well. I love Trump personally. And what we were looking at was just so awful and totalitarian and stupid. And it wasn't even the arguments that I disagreed with from the Kamala Harris. It's weird to even say her name now. Who was that exactly? It was like a bad dream. But it wasn't even so much the arguments I disagreed with, though I definitely disagree with the arguments. It was the style of argument that drove me completely bonkers, summarized most crisply by "shut up, racist." He's not bound to agree with you, but he's bound to stop and answer your question. And the left never did that. They would dismiss you out of hand. You are not worth listening to. Be quiet. And that's, of course, where the impulse to censorship comes from. It comes from the belief that you don't deserve to speak because you're not fully human. They own you. And that's what I voted against above all. I voted against a million different things that I hated about the last administration, was their total unwillingness to answer any question about why they were doing what they were doing, because it was just too insulting. And every single time I would just feel like raising the middle finger and screaming obscenities, which is not an adult response, I'll concede, but that's how I felt. And I think that's really at the heart of why the Epstein thing is so distressing. I mean, the guy was some weird sex freak who was abusing girls. We knew that. But the fact that the US government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my question seriously and instead said, "Case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist," was too much for me.
Now, with all due respect, I think I'm more MAGA because I want to see perverts behind bars and unable to victimize more children, right? Isn't that part of making America great again? It's making America safe? Like, why are we limiting the safety of our country to just the borders from illegals or terrorists? I mean, we go crazy when these illegals come over and they hurt innocent children. But yet with this particular case, there's a portion of us that just want to move on. We don't want justice for those kids. Is it because of time? Should that really matter? So, I mean, aren't we the group that defends innocent children? Or do we only defend them when they're in the womb because it's political, right? Now, I don't believe that we say and do things just because it's political, especially when it comes to children, right? But when it comes to specifically children, being abused in this manner, shouldn't this fall under that umbrella of protection? I mean, if this issue is long ago, those sickos shouldn't be allowed to live carefree at this current juncture. If there's a chance that we can go after them. Now, if we can't go after them, based on the justice system, then that investigation should really pinpoint who is I guess guilty, and then let the public know, because we want to know who these people are. We don't want to do business with them. In this particular case, cancel culture would be championed in this particular issue because of the heinous crime that we're talking about, right? Now, the amount of criticism from the right has caused a good amount of frustration on President Trump. At times, he's, lashed out at the Democrats, but he's even lashed out at his base and, fellow supporters. Let's take a listen.
Check this out. Trump says, the radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again. Just like with fake and fully discredited Steele dossier, the lying 51 intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, which the Dems swore had come from Russia. No, it came from Hunter Biden's bathroom. And even the Russia scam itself, a totally fake and made-up story used in order to hide crooked Hillary Clinton's big loss in the 2016 presidential election. These scams and hoaxes are all the Democrats are good at. It's all they have. They are no good at governing, no good at policy, no good at picking winning candidates. I'm going to pause and say, yes, that sentence I agree with. He says also, unlike Republicans, they stick together like glue. Their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this, I'm quoting a guy, I'm quoting the president, bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will. Even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years, I have had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And all these people want to talk about, with strong prodding by the fake news and the success-starved Dems, is the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success. because I don't want their support anymore. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Okay. Adios, Mr. President. If that's the game you want to play, I never had any problem saying anything such as this. Now, let's be real. I consider myself to be somewhat pragmatic. I am not a revolutionary. I'm not going to go storm the gates screaming Epstein files must be released. I'm not going to align myself with the diddling Democrats who are equally as guilty on almost all of this stuff. They had the files too. They could have released them.
In this one tweet, President Trump manages to go after Democrats, but he also manages to diss, quote-unquote, past supporters, saying they've bought into the fake news, the lies, and he doesn't want their support anymore. You know, with all due respect, Mr. President, not once have I bought into the fake news media. I voted for you 3 times, and I've been on the Trump train since around 2016. The fake news media is why I started this channel. It was to expose their lies and support your MAGA vision, which resonated with me the most. You know, like I said, I've been MAGA since, you know, before it was coined, and I feel like I've been MAGA since I was a teenager. Now, I'm scrutinizing you and your administration not based on what the idiot left or fake news media say, but I'm scrutinizing you based on what this administration and what those people, and yourself included, said when you guys were not in power, and what you guys are saying now that you're in power. So it's solely based on within your realm of administration. It has nothing to do with the fake news. Interestingly, within this tweet, though, he mentions a hoax. Now, the left is not only mocking him, but has left many on the right scratching their heads as to how can he be calling this a hoax? I mean, they were talking about the Epstein list for years, you know, and they just released how just a while ago they had certain media people come in and they gave them phase 1, you know, books of the Epstein files. So how could this be a hoax? Given this context, it's difficult to decipher what he actually means, and you can kind of interpret it however you want. What I personally think the president is talking about is how the left was trying to implicate him on the list, on the Epstein list, and that's what he's referring to as a hoax. And I think our press secretary actually gave a little bit of clarity and confirmed what the president was referring to, you know, regarding this hoax aspect. Let's take a listen.
Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
The president is referring to the fact that Democrats have now seized on this as if they ever wanted transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, which is an asinine suggestion for any Democrat to make. The Democrats had control of this building, the White House, for 4 years, and they didn't do a dang thing when it came to transparency in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous crimes.
So that's the interesting part, right? Many of the left are saying that President Trump doesn't want to release the files because he's on the list. Now, they had the list for 4 years when they were in the White House. If they had the confirmation or anything linking the president to that list, they wouldn't have hesitated in using it versus doing all the stuff that they did, from the lawfare to, you know, raiding his house to, you know, assassination attempts, etc. Right? If they had him on that list, or if there was any way to connect him on that, I mean, it makes sense for them to have used that. I think that would have been a good nail in the coffin versus all the other stuff that they did, and, you know, trying to prevent him from winning the election, right? But despite these realities, President Trump's messaging continues to make matters worse. Just a few days ago, he tweets the following: based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetrated by the Democrats should end right now. Although, you know, this is being seen by many as good news, the first sentence alone just kills any positivity in this. It's almost like he's annoyed, and I don't think he understands the reason for the push regarding this matter. It's almost like, you know, when he was on the campaign trail and he was talking about vaccines at the beginning. You know, how they were good, how under his administration they did the warp speed or whatever it was calling. He was literally getting booed when he mentioned them, and someone, told him to stop mentioning it eventually, because he eventually did. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Candace Owens. I think he and Candace Owens had a little bit of a fallout, because I think I think she was one of the ones who was telling him, listen, the vaccine's not popular, man. You got to stop mentioning that. It's only hurting you. It's not helping you. And and I think that he didn't come to realize that, until, eventually it hit him. He was like, yeah, I guess it does. But the point is I think there's something of that nature going on here, where he's just not getting why we're so adamant about this, right? So to add a little bit more here regarding this release of the grand jury testimony, it almost feels like a freebie. It almost feels like it's just to get people to stop talking about it, but it's not gonna go completely. It's not gonna completely go away, because we were told, we were promised, it was mentioned several times just since he's taken office, etc., etc. We bought hook, line, and sinker. These types of things that were mentioned, just like in the previous episode that I did, where people were saying, where's the Epstein list? We got to release it. Day one, I'm going to release this. Day one, I'm going to do this, and so on and so forth, right? And I think, in this tweet that Donald Trump Jr. says, it captivates exactly why we're making this push, right? It says, show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect these scumbags? Ask yourselves this question daily, and the answer becomes very apparent. Now, supposedly this was, I don't know, Truth tweeted, whatever, back in 2023, right? Exactly 2 years, almost exactly 2 years ago, right? And that's the type of sentiment that we have. That's not going to go away. Now, unfortunately, this entire scenario has the left making these like ridiculous accusations, as well as using the situation to their advantage, to be quite frank. And I mean that's how political parties are. Not only are they holding him to campaign promises, but they're also mocking us on the right, as well as making very, very, what seems like false accusations to try and implicate him. Let's take a look at this first scenario.
So MAGA world is now in open revolt. You want to know how bad it's getting out there? They're literally burning their MAGA army uniforms. Yeah. And there's just another guy standing next to him going, you got to flip them. That's your problem there. You gotta flip them. But clearly, telling your base to just forget about Epstein isn't working. But if you know Trump, he can always just pivot to the classic Trump distraction. Throw something outlandish out there and watch the dogs chase the squirrel. I'm going to invade Greenland. I'm going to bomb Iran. He's going to try something big.
President Trump is reigniting his decades-long feud with comedian Rosie O'Donnell.
I think we're going to need a bigger boat.
Now, that's just lighthearted humor, but the next allegation is serious. In an attempt to capitalize this situation, the Wall Street Journal has released an article claiming that President Trump wrote Epstein a very disgusting birthday letter. Let's take a look at this.
Wall Street Journal reporting on a birthday letter that Donald Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. Ghislaine Maxwell collected that and other letters for a 2003 birthday album. That's according to documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. Pages from the album are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. Here's how the Journal describes the letter Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, the letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. The letter concludes, happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret.
And now allegedly, here's how the conversation went. There must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Then the alleged Donald Trump said, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what that is. Jeffrey Epstein then says, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald then allegedly says, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. To which he responds, yes, we do, come to think of it. Then Donald Trump allegedly says again, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey responds, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. And then here's the supposed bombshell. A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Now, firstly, I'm questioning what the hell any of this means. And secondly, how's it a back and forth conversation if what's being reported is that this was a letter in a birthday booklet that was sent to Jeffrey Epstein? You know, I'm just not understanding the context here. And most importantly, I mean, where's the damn evidence? I think JD Vance hit it on the nail. Forgive my language, but this story is complete and utter bullshit, he says. The Wall Street Journal should be ashamed for publishing it. Where is this letter? Would you be shocked to learn that they never actually showed it to us before publishing it? Does anyone honestly believe this sounds like Donald Trump? And you know, I think that's a fair question. If they supposedly have this letter that Donald Trump wrote and drew something on, well then where's the damn letter? Where's the evidence? Because again, it's the same damn rodeo. Another massive bombshell claim with no actual evidence. No, just based on a source.
I'm not sure who with an active brain would believe this, but the left really doesn't go by, active neurons. They react off of emotions. So this is the type of hoax that President Trump is talking about, in that tweet, more than likely. And he's spot on, right, regarding these. These people have been caught with, lie after lie. So you can't really believe anything that they say at face value. Now, Trump may have one dark mark under his belt because of this Epstein stuff, but how many do the fake leftist media have under theirs? If far too many to be called journalists in my eyes. So almost immediately, President Trump announced a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, and I hope he wins big. He's already won a couple against, I think it was Paramount, for their 60-minute interview or something like that. So I hope this is another win that President Trump can have under his belt regarding, these false and baseless and untrue stories, right? Unfortunately, though, many influencers on the right have possibly received a call last week because it was almost in sync. A lot of them came out and said that they were going to trust the government and move on. Let's take a listen.
Sounds like Charlie Kirk got the call that his inquiries into the Epstein cover-up are too anti-Semitic for him to continue going down that road. And major credit to him for hosting the Student Action Summit, that's the Turning Point SAS Summit, over the weekend, where, well, almost all of the speakers were talking about it, despite Ben Shapiro saying that it's not on anybody's priority list. It ranks 0 in terms of any interest whatsoever. But this is what Charlie Kirk had to say yesterday.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands. I've said plenty this last weekend. So if you guys want to see my commentary on it, that's fine.
But Pam Bondi already lied and said that the files were on her desk for review, and then mysteriously they vanished and there was nothing to see whatsoever.
I'm going to talk about the Epstein files, and I'm going to make the case that even though there are unanswered questions about Epstein, it is in fact time to move on. Part of being on a political team is maintaining a certain amount of maturity, recognizing you can't win them all, recognizing there are some things that are important to you that are less important to the guy that you've put in charge, who is trying to focus on things right in front of him. And so having a sense of perspective, having a sense of balance, having a sense of maturity, I think is more important even than getting to the bottom of what really happened with Jeffrey Epstein.
Here is former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who now hosts a show on OAN, One America News, who was on an intelligence committee back when he was in Congress. Certainly is no shill for Israel. He has made it very clear how our foreign policy is, how shall we say, corrupted by certain influences, and wasn't happy that that we did Israel's dirty work over in Iran. But here's what he had to say last night. And when I first saw this clip, I thought maybe this is what he said in the past, just kind of speaking in generalities, praising Pam Bondi, calling her absolutely fantastic. But this actually is what he said last night. And then be sure to stay tuned because I'll get into why I think these things are happening.
President Trump never stopped building a business empire, a media empire, a political empire. We believe he has exactly the team to maximize success. Let's start with Pam Bondi. The Attorney General always takes a lot of flack in any administration, but look at what she has accomplished. The Bondi team successfully litigated away the judicial coup of nationwide injunctions.
He's talking about these district court judges, which kept blocking President Trump's executive orders. And the Department of Justice and the Trump administration has done a lot of fantastic things. So that's not to say that we should just forget Pam Bondi's incompetence and lies surrounding the Epstein cover-up, but please continue.
They did that. They won that for us. They have created the legal infrastructure for highly effective deportations. She's got the cartels self-deporting. She has targeted the criminals and the gang networks. Attorney General Pam Bondi is a star and has our full admiration and support. To those who don't share my enthusiasm, look at how far we've come.
Okay, I agree that we've got a lot of wins, but to say that she has my full support, hell no.
Now, I understand from one perspective what they're saying, but again, I'm thinking about the victims. If you're one of these people who are trying to say we've got a lot of things that we need to accomplish, there are more important things that we should focus on, etc., though I don't entirely disagree with you, I just like to humbly and sincerely ask you, would you have that same outlook if it were your daughter, granddaughter, niece, sister, whatever immediate family? When we have, usually when we have a hurt loved one, we normally want justice, sometimes vengeance, but at the very least we want justice. That's what this is all about. It's trying to, number one, prevent or get justice for these past victims, and quite honestly, it should be to prevent future victims of these sickos, right? Now, within the sea of conservative voices, one has stood out for me, and it's classic journalism. It's what classic journalism is supposed to look like, right? It's supposed to be unbiased in both directions. Let's take a look.
Megyn Kelly calls out Trump supporters blinded by loyalty to the president on Epstein. She called out MAGA influencers. On Tuesday's edition of the Megyn Kelly Show, Kelly singled out Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, and Laura Ingraham, accusing them and others of putting too much trust in the Trump admin when it comes to the Epstein files. The late billionaire Epstein, we get it. Media, you don't need to rehash that whole story. Quote, you now have some MAGA influencers clearly on direction of the White House saying, okay, I'm done. You had Laura Ingraham go on her show on Fox News last night being like, oh, well, after there was the pile-on at Charlie Kirk's Turning Point event, where all this Republican infighting, and then kind of suggested she's moving on from that. Okay, she was part of it. I like Laura, but she 100% stood up there and fanned this flame. Kelly was greeted by an enthusiastic crowd at Turning Point USA event, where she asked how many people cared about the Epstein files and ripped into Bondi. The former Fox News host also played a clip of Charlie Kirk in which he said he was moving on from Epstein and putting his trust in his friends in the administration like Bondi. Quote, let's not pretend that some of the president's most loyal advocates aren't very, very interested in Epstein. They are, all right? However, some in the media let their loyalty to President Trump, their journalistic obligation, let their loyalty to the President Trump, their journalist, okay, not to President Trump, to the President Trump. Kelly said noting that Kirk does not have the same obligation as he's not a journalist. Kelly added Shapiro to her list of MAGA influencers she's not pleased with following their heated debate on Epstein this week on her show. Kelly declared she refuses to be the CNN of Trump 2.0 by simply accepting whatever the administration says as truth. I have nothing but respect and admiration for this president, but I'm in a different business. I am in the journalism business. And my position is you can trust, but you must verify. And I refuse to be the CNN of Trump 2.0, where they just trusted the administration of Biden's mental acuity and willingly, by doing so, ignored the biggest crisis and controversy and scandal in modern political history. That's not what's happening under Trump. But I'm just saying, journalists, people like me who do consider themselves as journalists, you have an obligation not to just trust. You kick the tires, that's your job. You approach all stories and everything fed to you by an administration official like them, love them, respect them, trust them or not, with a hefty dose of skepticism.
Kudos to Megyn Kelly for calling balls and strikes, and she is 100% correct in my eyes. If we are going to hold the prior administrations to certain and specific standards, then we should hold the current one to those same standards. No excuses, no exceptions. Despite all the winning, despite our support for Trump, it should be the same. That's what keeps us level, that's what keeps us balanced, and that's what prevents us from being hypocrites like the other side of the spectrum. Now, based on what Megyn Kelly picked up on, many of us on the right have come up with a number of conspiracy theories, to try and justify what's been going on these past couple of days, such as, I've heard one that, Trump is playing 4D chess, right? Like, I can't even entertain that given the number of off-tone responses that President Trump has given. So that doesn't, jive with me, if you will. But here's one possibility that has gotten some traction from, some folks on the right.
Another possibility I think is highly likely, which I haven't heard anybody else talk about, so I'm curious to hear what you think. Leave a comment down below, is the Trump administration may have concluded that by releasing the information and allowing the American people and the world to see the extent of this operation and who was involved and how long it had been going on and the kinds of things these people were doing, it may shock the conscience, obviously it would shock the conscience of the average American, so much so that it would destabilize support, faith in our government as a whole, potentially even the economy.
I've seen memes saying that, if revealing these details and bringing down the world means bringing down, if revealing some of these details means bringing down the world or the U.S., then the U.S. deserves to fall or something like that, something of that nature. Now, I understand the emotionally driven sentiment because I'm there as well, but logically thinking, what are the implications of that? How many more children could potentially suffer, and regular people, if really the U.S. fell, right? If history teaches us anything, the demise of any great kingdom or nation is inevitable. But I personally don't want to contribute to it or see it happen in my lifetime. So it's very, very difficult situation, and I understand it. Now, here's another theory that has been floating around, which honestly, I wouldn't put it past the Democrats of doing. Let's check this one out.
There is a rumor or conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, that behind the scenes, my friends, Democrats in the previous administration had unleashed fake documents to sour any information that may come out about Epstein, handed it to Trump and said, good luck. And now Trump is like, those SOBs. They may have falsely implicated him or people he works with, and now if he just goes for their documents, it's going to destroy him and his agenda. And now the Democrats are trying to force a vote to get it released, almost like it was a landmine.
So Tim reported a few months back that there was a whistleblower from the White House, if I'm not mistaken, or from FBI or something like that, that had come forward to say that the FBI was deleting Epstein files. I guess this was before the full transition of the team happened, before, Pam Bondi got in there and Kash Patel and all the others. Could this be true, and that's why they don't want to release these details? I mean, it's possible. But if that were true, darn, the messaging is way, way off, because that is not what they're indicating. Right? Now, could there be some possibility to this? It's possible, given how quick the Democrats wanted to vote to have the Epstein files released. I mean, why didn't they release it when they were in charge? To me, this seems like a political tactic, because if it's true that they muddied the evidence, then they know Trump won't release it, and it plays to their favor. They'll come across as, oh, see, we're the party of transparency, right? Now, if Trump, because Trump didn't release it, right? That's kind of what they're masquerading as, right? But in either way, they kind of benefit from this, right? If he releases it, they benefit from it. If they don't release it, It benefits them. So it's a very, very masterful tactic that they've used this situation to their advantage, to be quite frank. Now, what's interesting though is that, you know, that tactic, they're hoping that Trump would lose support, right? What's interesting is that CNN just ran a poll regarding President Trump's support during this whole Epstein debacle. Let's take a look.
Congressional Democrats have been trying to seize on this. You hear them also parroting what you're hearing online, saying, release the files, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. I mean, is that working for them?
No, I mean, look, here's what's so important. You know, we talk about the potential of Republicans leaving Donald Trump. They're not leaving him. But what about congressional Democrats and problems with their own base? Democrats' net approval of congressional Democrats, according to Quinnipiac University, in June of 2025, it was their second worst ever at minus 12 points. Is that not low enough for you? How about we go even lower? In July of 2025, minus 13 points. Their worst net approval rating for congressional Democrats among Democrats ever. Donald Trump is not the one who has problems with this political base. It is congressional Democrats are the ones who have problems with their own political base.
So on July 22nd, it was announced that the DOJ is going to speak with Epstein's former associate and alleged human trafficker, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Ghislaine Maxwell. This, along with President Trump requesting Pam Bondi releasing any credible evidence, and the grand jury's testimony seems like President Trump, or the Trump administration, is trying to make up for how terrible they've handled this situation. Is it going to be enough? I don't know, but let's take a listen.
We got a Fox News alert for you. We just learned that Attorney General Pam Bondi has ordered her deputy AG to go meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's former associate, in prison.
Todd Pyro joins us now with the latest. Hey, Todd.
Hey, good morning again, guys. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche saying the following, quote, President Trump has told us to release all credible evidence. If Ghislaine Maxwell has information about anyone who has committed crimes against victims, the FBI and the DOJ will hear what she has to say. I have communicated with counsel for Ms. Maxwell to determine whether she would be willing to speak with prosecutors from the department. I anticipate meeting with Ms. Maxwell in the coming days, end quote. Blanche also saying, quote, justice demands courage. For the first time, the Department of Justice is reaching out to Ghislaine Maxwell to ask, what do you know? FBI Director Kash Patel also signaling his support for the move, reacting online earlier saying, get it. Ghislaine Maxwell is the only associate held criminally or civilly liable in connection with the allegations against Epstein. President Trump called for grand jury transcripts to be unsealed, and the DOJ filed the motion for that on Friday. Back over to you.
So I'm not sure about you guys. This feels a little fake, and just feels like they're throwing, breadcrumbs to squash the backlash, to be quite frank. I'm just being sincere. I mean, why couldn't they have done this before? Why did they need this entire backlash to happen in order for this to take place? Additionally, is anyone actually going to be held accountable for what these perverts did? I mean, I get it. This was a long time ago, right? But according to Pam Bondi, they were reviewing thousands of videos. That means there were thousands of victims. And by those people still being free, you can bet your bottom dollar that those thousands of victims are now more than likely millions of victims, and more potentially to come every single day that these people are allowed to be free. So in the end, we have every right to ask for justice from anyone, right? For years, we've used phrases such as, we're draining the swamp and that no one is above the law. Based on what's happened and the direction this administration has gone with this specific situation, right? It doesn't seem like we can use those phrases anymore, because it doesn't seem like we're draining the swamp. It seems like we're now covering up the swamp. And by covering up the swamp, we become the swamp. And the law, does it get applied to everybody equally, or are the elites do they have a different justice system, right? I mean, we complained in the last election about a two-tier justice system, right? Where one side gets overlooked while the other side isn't. Specifically when it came to President Trump, but not just President Trump, a lot of his supporters. We've shown episodes with that cases. So we can't have it both ways, right? We can't just say that we're going to do one thing and then not do it. Now, that being said, does that mean we abandon MAGA or Trump? No. There's really nowhere to go. There's no one in the middle, and the left is just too far left. They're just too crazy. We're not going anywhere. But what about those in the middle that just came over in this last election cycle? What about them? Are they as solid as the solid base of MAGA? Are they as firm as we are? Additionally, something else to ponder due to our firmness, do we have a blind spot? Can our love and support for Trump give us this cult-like behavior? I mean, if we aren't allowed to hold this president to the same standards that we criticized the prior administration for, then yes, we have crossed that line. And we've got to be careful. No one should be shamed for wanting justice for these victims. And to denounce people for wanting that is cult-like behavior, which is where the left has been for years. And I think Alex Jones really does a good job of expressing that. Let's take a look.
If you talk about this, I'm going to excommunicate you. Well, you're not the Pope, bro. I mean, you're not speaking from the throne ex cathedra. And plus, I'm not Catholic. So, I think of Catholics, it's just, give me a break. Anyone who disagrees with anything I say is banished. And I'm not saying Trump land is a cult. The Democrats are the cult of hating reason and logic and common sense. But when Trump starts behaving like that, it starts getting into cult territory.
I know this is just one issue, and I hope it's the only example. But if we don't hold President Trump accountable like we would Biden, then it could be we may see other examples like this one. And I pray that that's not the case. I pray that we don't let this issue sink into a void and these monsters are eventually not held accountable for their actions. Putting criminals and deviants behind bars and having the same laws applied to all is just one aspect of how we can make our country great again. So guys, that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining. I've got some additional video. I definitely want to cover this situation with Obama and the coup that was attempted. We'll get into that in the next video. But until then, guys, God bless you guys. God bless America. I will see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.